we already mentioned for 50 years, we don't need to mention again. Since 1970, he has reported daily on Chicago's politics and produced weekly public affair programs featuring leading newsmakers. The winner of 2 Edgar R. Murrow Awards from the Radio Television News Directors Association, he shares a Peabody Award and earned numerous AP, UPI, and Gabriel Awards for diligent reporting. Just a few weeks ago, he was here at the club and given an award by the Chicago Headline Club with the Lifetime Achievement Award. Please welcome back to the Union League Club, Take One on WLS-AM, Bill Cameron.
In my 50 years, I've been to tons of luncheons. We usually have the white meal or the brown meal, and I got to say today's white meal was superb, really above average. Well, it's good to be here with you, and I want to emphasize that today is not a debate. It's a forum. Each candidate is here to tell us about themselves and the policies they support or oppose, and why. Part 1 of the program will consist of each candidate making a 4-minute opening statement. Part 2 of the program will consist of myself as moderator asking the written questions that you, the audience, have submitted using the cards and pens on your tables. I already have one. Please don't hesitate to write more. I'll categorize and consolidate them, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Again, this is not a debate, so there will be no rebuttals. We will strictly adhere to the time limits, and it's my pleasure to introduce the timekeeper to you, Jeff Gray. Jeff is the new Director of Public Affairs here at the Union League Club of Chicago. When Jeff calls time, it means stop speaking. Now let's call the first candidate up to the lectern to make her opening statement, after which they'll take their seat here at the table at the dais. Let's bring on Carmen Navarro-Jacon for her 4-minute opening statement.
Did you say a quick 4 minutes? Good afternoon. My name is Carmen Navarro-Jacon, and I'm a candidate for Cook County Sheriff. A little bit about my personal background. I started with the Cook County Sheriff's Office in 1994. I was a single mother on public aid with 2 young boys, looking for a job. I found a career. I rose through the ranks of the Cook County Sheriff's Office to become a sergeant, a lieutenant, an assistant chief, and ultimately the first assistant executive director running the 2nd largest department in the Cook County Sheriff's Office, in charge of all 16 courthouses, civil process, evictions, service of summons, and orders of protection. I'm a graduate of the FBI National Academy. In 2013, I attended the prestigious academy where only 1% of law enforcement in the world gets to attend. I then went on, I also teach currently at the Chicago Police Academy. I teach all newly promoted sergeants about domestic violence, orders of protection, response, and service. Now, why am I running? The most important reason, I am a wife, a mother, I have 5 children, and I have 4 grandchildren. I have custody of 2 of those grandchildren. They all attend Chicago Public Schools. When I took a leave of absence from the Sheriff's Office in December of 2020 to go work for the Clerk of the Circuit Court, where I currently serve as the Executive Clerk for Court Operations, Administration, and Investigations, I was sitting at home watching the news like many of you and decided I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. I fear for my children, whether they're going to school, driving on the highway, or going to the park. We can't have that. My family moved out of Humboldt Park in the 80s after my brother was murdered due to gang violence, and here we are in 2022, and I'm facing the same situation with my children. I will not have that. Our communities and businesses in downtown, those that survived the pandemic, are now struggling to even staff their businesses, which will make all other bodies of government have to raise the taxes because we won't be able to sustain the county and will lead to further disinvestment of our communities. That is why I'm running for Cook County Sheriff. I am qualified. I am passionate about the office. I understand the office, and I feel that I am the one who can bridge the gap that we are currently facing between our communities and law enforcement. Thank you.
Okay. Nolan Rivera is our other candidate. Sarge, come on up. Good to meet you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. It's a pleasure for being here and a real honor. I'm Nolan Rivera. I'm running for Cook County Sheriff because we need good, strong leadership that you can trust in a position that is only a part of the criminal justice system and a very important part of that system. I'm the most highly trained and qualified candidate for this race. Allow me to give you a brief synopsis supporting my statement. I have a comprehensive plan for change and improvements to the Sheriff's Office, which would take too long to discuss in this forum. So I invite you to visit my webpage, riveraforsheriff.com. That's Rivera, the number 4, sheriff.com, to look at the very important initiatives that I have posted there. I strongly believe in community involvement, so do not hesitate to raise questions. I'm a graduate. As I promised, here is a summary of my training, experience, qualifications to lead the Sheriff's Office, which is an important part of our integrated criminal justice system. I'm a graduate of the University of Chicago Master of Science degree program in Threat and Response Management. This is a highly coveted degree program in the Homeland Security arena that encompasses a comprehensive approach to the crisis management and leadership. It emphasizes the development of competencies to address a cross-section of threats and hazards to include response to and recovery from mass shootings, incidents, natural disasters, pandemics, and acts of terrorism. Central to these efforts are the development of skills necessary to conduct risk assessments and facilitate high-level coordinating and collaboration between critical stakeholders at the local, state, and federal level. Internationally, I have served as an anti-terrorism officer and country coordinator for the United States Air Force in Panama. I'm a graduate of 4 police academies, and I am an Illinois State certified law enforcement instructor, a Chicago Police certified law instructor, an FBI certified instructor, an FBI certified weapons instructor, and an FBI certified sniper. As a police training instructor, I have had the privilege of training over 90,000 of the next generation of law enforcement in their core competencies of policing. I am a retired combat veteran master sergeant with over 33 years of service in both the U.S. Army and the Air Force. In my last combat deployment, I was the flight chief responsible for the law enforcement and protection functions for the largest air base in Iraq with a population of over 36,000 personnel. On the federal level of law enforcement, I have worked as the United States Federal Air Marshal, protecting our nation's skies and preventing another 9/11 style attack. I'm a veteran law enforcement officer with 28 years of distinguished service as a sergeant with the Chicago Police Department. Serving in this capacity has given me a keen understanding of the challenges facing the criminal justice system today. I have over 50 individual awards, commendations, medals, and citations for excellence and leadership. However, what is most important is the fact that I have dedicated my entire life to the service of my country and my community. I will bring the same dedicated high-level leadership, experience, knowledge, and gained wisdom to the Sheriff's Office. No other candidate in this race brings to the table the breadth of training, education, and experience that I do as a law enforcement practitioner and public servant. Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of questions from the audience. The first one for both of you, building on your experience. This questioner wants to know, what specific experience do you have in managing an office and organizing over 6,000 employees on a multi-million-dollar budget? Carmen, why don't you go first?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, I rose through the ranks of the Cook County Sheriff's Office, ending up running the second largest department. So I was specifically responsible for over 1,300 employees who worked in all areas of the Sheriff's Office. So I interacted on a daily basis with the Office of the Chief Judge, with our local law enforcement municipalities, all 134 of them in Cook County, with our state's attorneys, with our public defenders. When it came to enforcing evictions or serving orders of protection, I had to work with the community, and I had to work on budgets and contract negotiations. There's a $619 million budget in the Sheriff's Office, and being in charge of court services, I was in charge of over a third of it. So I do have experience with the budget, have experience with the staff. Currently in the clerk's office, I manage 1,100 out of the 1,300 employees, and all 16 courthouses. So I have experience in managing not just any government, but county government, and working with our county, city, and municipal partners.
Okay, Nolan, how about your experience?
Well, as I stated in my opening, one of my last combat tours, I was in charge of the protection and law enforcement for the largest air base in Iraq. The perimeter fence line itself was over 25 miles long. It has 36,000 personnel, and we did this under combat operations. I have run the gun ranges for the Chicago Police Department with an annual budget of about $5 million plus, and that's every year that we run that program. I have trained thousands of individuals. I have led countless thousands of troops in the field, in the military, in the Army. I worked, as I said, with internationally with governments like Panama, and was the country coordinator for the Air Force in Panama, and that dealt with force protection of the force, and also coordinating resources, and those resources getting to the individuals that were rebuilding schools, hospitals, and clinics.
Okay, another question from the audience. Does the Sheriff's Office have a role to play in reducing violent crime in Chicago? And if so, what are your specific plans? Carmen?
I would argue that's why I'm running to be the next sheriff of Cook County. For far too long, a lot of people don't even know what the Sheriff's Office does or how it impacts their quality of life. In the Cook County Sheriff's Office right now, there are over 65,000 unserved warrants for violent offenders. This isn't retail theft. These aren't small petty offenses. These are violent offenders out in our communities, and the victims aren't safe. So I would argue that the Sheriff's Office has not been meeting its statutory obligations when it comes to warrants. It also has not been meeting its statutory obligations when it comes to supervising individuals on electronic monitoring. Those are specific jobs of the Sheriff's Office. Those are both jobs that I believe Tom Dart has been failing in. And having experience working in the office, even enforcing and serving orders of protection, seizure warrants for firearms, we're responsible for that as well in the Sheriff's Office, but a lot of the community doesn't understand that. Opening satellite offices in the River North area and Chinatown isn't going to solve the issues when the office is not meeting its statutory obligations. We can best work with our municipal partners by doing our job first, not trying to take over theirs.
Nolan?
Well, I think the first issue is that the Sheriff's Office has to make sure that it has its house in order. That has been a problem for a very long time under this current administration. Bringing up the River North satellite function there, you have to ask yourself whether Mr. Dart is serious about controlling crime, or is it more a show or a popularity contest. When you hire a radio announcer, no offense to radio announcers, to run a carjacking unit without having the law enforcement experience that I feel is required, or not reaching out to inside the county sheriff's office itself for a professional to run that program, I think that's a problem. I think that's a tell of whether he is serious or not on helping to control crime in Chicago. You cannot tell me that there's not someone there more qualified than that. If Mr. Rowe wanted to be helpful, he could have been a liaison with the businesses there, and we could have had a professional working hand in hand. Cook County, Chicago Cook County, I think because Chicago police handle the majority of incidents, they still need help. We can't just sit in a corner either and keep our arms crossed and not be a part of the solution. We still have to work with them. We have to provide them the support that they need when they need it. And we have to work with the prosecutors and the chief judge to ensure that when we do make arrests, that those arrests count for something.
Your remark about radio people reminds me of what Richard J. Daley said to us when I came on the beat in 1970. One day when he particularly didn't like the press, he looked down from his lectern in the conference room at City Hall on the 5th floor and said, "You men don't do anything, you just write." Okay, we got a couple more questions. How would you handle the Cook County Jail, especially as the largest mental health institution in the state? Carmen?
The jail is currently being dismantled, whether our voters have realized that or not. Currently, if you go to 26 in California, those corners, there's already been 4 buildings that have been knocked down as part of a plan for the landscape and how it's going to look moving forward. That's an issue, considering, as I stated earlier, there's over 65,000 unserved warrants in Cook County for violent offenders. The first issue of the jail is the culture. It is not a culture that is positive. It is a culture of being punitive. As a mother and as a grandmother, when my children do something wrong, I hold them accountable. They still understand that I love them, and then I give them the resources they need to make better decisions moving forward. The county jail, the infrastructure itself, the officers, it is not a culture of providing resources and giving people what they need to do better. All we've done is expand the size of the jail cell from a 6x8 to the size of a zip code. So the first thing in the jail is addressing the culture, better training for the officers, fix the heating, the air conditioning, things we take for granted, that the officers have to go work in every day and that the inmates have to live in every day, is not conducive to reform, not real reform.
Nolan, how would you handle the jail as the state's biggest mental health unit?
Well, here's the issue. You need to understand what the sheriff's office mission is. Now, in essence, the sheriff's office is a law enforcement entity. As such, they sometimes are not prepared or should not be the sole provider for mental health care or issues. The sheriff's office can absolutely be the first step in drug rehabilitation or health care providing health care, but they are not the sole provider. They should not be the sole provider, and some of those services are better suited, performed by agencies outside the sheriff's office. So in addressing your question with mental health, those are things that need to be worked on and partnered with other agencies, nonprofits, churches, synagogues, mosques, even private organizations like sports teams. Some of those agencies and nonprofits and churches, they need to take up part of the responsibility on helping to rehabilitate people. Again, we have cut, the state has cut mental health services drastically. Those services need to come back, and they need to come back in a big way, because the sheriff's office is only the first step in that recovery.
Okay, next question. Are incarceration rates too high? How do you deal with that and protect our communities?
If there's, again, 65,000 unserved warrants in Cook County, police are doing their job. State's attorney is approving the charges. Individuals are not coming to court, or they're violating the conditions of their bond or of their sentence. There is a disparity in who is being housed at the jail. So I don't think the question right now so much is the number of arrests as in who is being housed at the jail. I believe it's 75% are African American, about 18% Latino, and then there's other races. And again, they're not receiving services. We need better training of law enforcement in Cook County as a whole. And as sheriff, being the chief law enforcement officer, we have several buildings that are remaining empty, we're not doing anything with. We need to bring back the boot camp. It was a wonderful program under Sheriff Sheehan for nonviolent offenders. We need to work with our community partners who get money every day. They get grants, yet they have no partners to work with them. That's what we need to bring back. I do not believe that we're arresting too many people. I believe we're not providing enough resources and programs for those who are coming in contact with our criminal justice system.
Nolan, are incarceration rates too high?
I don't believe that they are too high. I believe that if your goal is to, the simple goal is to empty a jail, I think that's a goal that is on shaky foundation. The goal is to use common sense alternatives to incarceration. The incarceration rate is a nice headline, but when you're arresting the same individuals 3 times in a row for carjackings, armed carjackings, gun offenses, then it's going the right way. The issue is, once they are arrested, what happens in the courts and what happens with the prosecutors. So the incarceration rate that we are seeing now are individuals that are creating most of the violent crime, as far as I see, in the communities. The issue is, once they get incarcerated, what do we do with them? Do they go back out to the community? Are they bailed with no bail and no restrictions, or some restrictions? That's where the issue lies.
Okay. Feel free to send up more questions. In the meantime, I'll pose a few. You may have noticed Tom Dart is not here. Carmen, why do you think the sheriff is not here?
Well, I can think of 2 reasons. Number one, he is a career politician. He's used to things being appointed or anointed, as I like to say, his entire career, and at this point may not feel that he has to be here. He is supported and slated by the Democratic Party. Neither Nolan and I are. It's something we've struggled with. So one thing is, he may not feel that he needs to be here. The second, which I believe more strongly in, is he is afraid to stand on his record. I've said it over and over again. He's been the sheriff for 16 years. If was doing such a great job, he should have no issue with standing on his record. I don't have an issue with standing on my personal or professional experiences. He should not have an issue with being here with Nolan and I.
Nolan, why do you think Sheriff Dart is not here?
I think it's plain arrogance that he's not here. And that's plain and simple. I think when you have run unopposed for as many times as he has, I think he feels that he's untouchable, and that he does not owe you an audience. We have gone to many meet the candidates, greet the candidates, forums, and he has been absent at every one of them. This also shows me that maybe he has a problem with being called out as not being a law enforcement professional that I am. And only recently did he get his law enforcement certification. So I have questions about that. I absolutely think it's arrogance, it's complacency, and I think he even feels entitled.
Darge, Carmen has you in the appellate court trying to knock you off the ballot still because of this registered law enforcement officer requirement in the latest statute in which he was grandfathered. What do you think about that issue?
Well, it's the same issue as you hear Mr. Rivera referring to, being the only one qualified. It's the issue I faced since the beginning when I decided to run for this office. The basic law enforcement certification requirement is a requirement that in Cook County to do our job, which I did for 26 years, made arrests, approve arrests, enforce warrants, was not necessary to do the job because we are deputized in Cook County. And that portion of the law, I was qualified enough to run the second largest department under Tom Dart's administration. I was qualified enough for him to recommend and for me to be admitted into the FBI National Academy. But when it comes to running for sheriff, he didn't want competition, quite and simple. And he thought I would back down. I found a team of attorneys and a group of people who believed in me and understood that I am qualified for that office. And the circuit court judge ruled that. He's doesn't, as Mr. Rivera stated, Tom Dart doesn't want competition, and he's got it.
We should talk about ankle bracelets because electronic monitoring is a big issue in Cook County, needing reform, many say. Nolan, what would you do about electronic monitoring if you became the sheriff?
Well, first of all, it needs to be properly staffed. I don't think it has enough staffing. I believe that the equipment, and these are things that I've been getting from the people that are working there, actually with the monitoring system. The monitoring system is dysfunctional as far as responses. They've had over 100,000 responses to electronic alerts, and Mr. Dart claims that it's 89% effective. However, what he doesn't say is that there's over 300 individuals that are unaccounted for. The sheriff's office has no idea where they're at. And as most law enforcement professionals know, that 10% of most of the criminal activity is actually conducted by only 10% of the population. So where is this population? How can you say that the electronic monitoring program is being effective when you cannot account for 10% of your population? I believe that the program has to be restructured and has to be more responsive. I believe we need to hire at least 3,000 more officers and to bolster that program and to bolster the other programs in the sheriff's office.
Carmen, how about you? What should be done about the ankle bracelets?
The program itself, the equipment, it's very difficult to cut off an ankle bracelet anymore. The issue is the program that was installed in the systems. You can order a pizza and track it right to your door. You can run to the corner and you can catch the pizza delivery guy before he gets to your door. But we can't find offenders on the program, which at times there's been over 3,000. Currently there's a little over 2,200 offenders on electronic monitoring, and there are a lot that are considered AWOL and missing. And now with the new Safety Act and the reform where for 48 hours they get movement, the intention of that law was good. Individuals need to go to the doctor, look for jobs, absolutely. But we know that criminals take advantage of laws with good intentions and use them to their benefit. And as you've seen, there's many of these offenders on electronic monitoring being arrested, rearrested, and then let back out on electronic monitoring. So the supervision of staff is important. Again, with a $619 million budget, that unit is understaffed. I don't believe we need to hire 3,000 new officers. I believe that for the attorneys in the room and to my attorneys, I apologize, but we have way too many attorneys in the sheriff's office. We're supposed to be working with a section of the state's attorney's office to help us on our cases. We can save money there, reallocate those funds to get the officers we need to monitor the individuals on electronic monitoring.
And speaking of the state's attorney, she takes a hell of a lot of heat for supposedly coddling criminals in her prosecution decisions. Roland, how do you rate the state's attorney on this issue?
I think, as we all see, elections do have consequences, and we see that every day with the, I think, lack of prosecution of serious violent criminals. The jail is there for a purpose, and it is there to keep the worst of the worst behind bars. I understand that sometimes there are people that get caught up and you don't need to be there, maybe at low-level offenses. But it's pretty obvious, it's really common sense to see what is going on out here, that those violent offenders are not being handled properly by the prosecuting attorney. We have to do the hard work sometimes and not the popular headline. Again, the fact that you want to empty the jails, should not be the sole purpose. It has to be a common sense approach to all these problems at the jail, and especially with the prosecutor.
Carmen, how would you handle this issue?
Well, I'm running for Cook County Sheriff, not State's Attorney, but I do have an opinion. Surprise. To me, I know what my job is. Tom Dart has stood back, put his hands up consistently, and stayed out of the way. That's why people don't understand what the sheriff's office and the role that the sheriff's office has played in the rising crime in our city and in our county. Do I believe that Kim Foxx has done everything right? Absolutely not. I don't agree with a lot of what she's done. Do I believe that she's the sole reason we're where we're sitting today? Absolutely not. If I did, I'd be running for state's attorney. I'm not. I know the role that the sheriff's office plays. I know how the sheriff's office can partner with the rest of our criminal justice partners to come up with solutions. Anyone can have a good idea. If you do not have partners and you don't communicate and you don't talk, you don't get to where they're going. Kim Foxx will know where I disagree with her, and she'll know that because I'll call her and tell her, this is where I disagree. Let's find a solution and come to a solution. I'm not going to step back and put my hands up and let our voters villainize police or villainize the state's attorney or villainize any other government official. We're all in this together, and the voters look to us for protection. When we're so disjointed, our citizens are hopeless. I do not want to be hopeless. I do not want my children or my grandchildren to be hopeless. So do I think she's doing everything right? Absolutely not. But when I get there, I'm going to find out exactly why she's doing it and what we can do to fix it.
This year, the governor signed that controversial criminal justice reform legislation, things like no cash bail. Was this such a good idea, Nolan?
Again, the sheriff's office is just a part of the criminal justice system. The governor signing that bill, especially for the bail reform, I believe, again, here we use blanket solutions for individual problems. And when you do that, the criminal will always take it, the serious criminal will always take advantage of that. So when you allow all the criminals to get out on bail, no cash bail, the violent offender will always take advantage of that, no matter what. That program we should have had law enforcement practitioners sitting at the table with the other partners, with the prosecutors, with the chief judges, to make good common sense bail reform. You could have done a tiered bail reform where the violent offender, if he's been arrested for 3 times for carjacking, then absolutely he should be on a tier where your chances for bail are limited. So they should either be no bail or a very high bail. So we can't just use blanket solutions for individual problems, because everybody that goes into the system is an individual and needs to be treated as an individual.
How about this one, Carmen? Was this such a good idea?
The idea of bail reform was based on a functioning criminal justice system. The key word being a functioning criminal justice system. In a state where our police needed more training, in a county, again, where we had unserved warrants, where we have individuals on electronic monitoring who are not being supervised and do not have to participate in programs and still receive credit towards a sentence, a potential sentence, and also pulling resources from unincorporated areas of Cook County to bring them into the city and other areas, leaving your constituents in those unincorporated and suburban areas without any police, is not a functioning system. So bail reform in that context was not a good idea. Everyone that needed to be at that table for those conversations to discuss the practicality of the issues and the impact were not there. Law enforcement was not an active participant. Community members and actual voters were not actual participants. Victims of violent crime were not participants. And we're seeing the results of that with all the back and forth now with trying to amend and change things in that law now. So as it was written and the way it came across, absolutely not. But the worst thing about how that came about is that Tom Dart insists that he did not know about two major parts that affected his office. The 48 hours for individuals on electronic monitoring, he said he had no idea. And the mystery fourth qualification to run for sheriff in the state of Illinois.
We're about to get a casino apparently on the near west side. Such a good idea, Nolan?
Well, one, I don't gamble, so to me, it's not an important function for me. Again, what the casino has to do with the sheriff's office is not a concern to me.
Well, we used to call it vice, and the criticism is it will, adhere, it would invite criminal activity. No cause for concern?
Well, you're looking at it in a different angle, right?
Right.
As far as response for the sheriff's office, it's going to be in Chicago Cook. So it'll be interesting how and who they choose to run the security at the casino. The area around the casino already is kind of stressed. Downtown is already stressed. So I would be very interested to see where they plan to get more law enforcement resources to keep down any potential crime that's going to happen because of the casino.
Carmen, your take on the casino?
Horrible idea. I'm going to stop there to let that soak in. I say horrible idea because of the area. Just the flow of traffic. Again, we have not allowed our businesses in the downtown area to come back from the pandemic. The criminal activity and the crimes already going on for our residents who live in downtown is already skyrocketing. To add a casino where some people who are hopeless, we already know a lot of people, mental health during the pandemic increased. People being home and secluded and by themselves, it is a vice. I still believe it's a vice. I've seen people suffer from that. If you're looking to hit, some quick money, somebody hits some quick money, they come outside, they're going to get robbed. It impacts, again, quality of life of so many people. And again, good intentions. It was supposed to fund pensions for police and fire. It was very good intentions at the beginning. And as we've seen with way too many laws, the way to is paved with good intentions, and we're headed towards that.
This is the office that serves warrants. It can be often dangerous. Does this need to be reformed or protections added, Nolan?
Absolutely. I think the warrant units, again, when I say hiring 3,000 officers, that's not just for one program, that's for all programs. The law enforcement portion has only 625 officers. sheriff's police, so that program needs to be bolstered. The warrant unit, they also need to be bolstered. All these programs, when I say 3,000 officers, it's spread throughout the county system, the sheriff's office. I think, again, when someone is arrested for a violation of a warrant, where are the consequences? We can't continue to arrest people for warrants and then give them another court date and let them out again, and then they violate that warrant again. So there has to be at some point, there has to be a stopgap and some consequences to people not upholding their end of the bargain of coming to court like they promised.
How about warrants, Carmen? Should this be changed in some way?
For those of you who don't know, Tom Dart disbanded the warrant unit in the sheriff's office many years ago. It was worked alongside the state police and a couple of federal agencies. That was disbanded. That's why the warrant unit has grown to so much. As I said before, being in charge of the court services unit, I was not part of the 625 officers on patrol. We served the majority of the warrants, seizure warrants for firearms, and domestic battery warrants. It was not the sheriff's police officers. With over 5,600 law enforcement officers in the sheriff's office now, that is a unit that desperately needs to be brought back for two reasons. We've seen it play out. It is not safe for the officers or the individuals when warrants sit unserved. And it's simply because, as we've seen tragically with Ella French, when that individual was pulled over, he had missed court and thought he had a warrant for his arrest, and his instinct to run and flee, he shot and killed her and seriously wounded her partner. That plays out every day across the country and in this county with individuals with warrants. Or in Chicago specifically, somebody doesn't make a full stop at a stop sign, the officer pulls them over for a simple traffic stop. There's children in the back seat. You run the mother or the father. They have a warrant. The officer has no discretion. He or she must make the arrest. Those children in the back seat are traumatized. All they see is the police taking their parent away. And again, those are warrants that go straight to the sheriff's office. So just like we hold expungement summits, we do need to work with the Office of the Chief Judge, the state's attorneys, and a public defender to have a summit with warrants. Individuals can file a motion to quash and recall their warrants, appear in front of the court and move on, and the reconstituted warrant unit can go out and serve those warrants that are sitting.
You both allude to better training in the office of employees. Cite the most glaring example among the sheriff's police or the correctional staff. Who is it that needs the better training the most? Nolan?
Are you saying between the both of them or all of them?
Take your pick.
Because I think it's the leadership that needs the training. The leadership needs to know what their role is clearly, and without them knowing what their role is and how to mentor those officers, how to lead those officers, that's the key right there. Officers, I've worked with Chicago Police Department officers in the academy, and they are doing yeoman's work in getting re-educated or learning new methods to deal with the public. So the beginning and the problem is there with the leadership. The leadership needs to be trained more. Their education for officers, it has to be more hands-on training. It can't be just computer-based training. We've gone too far, I think, in that direction. So that does not prepare an officer for a hands-on incident because they learned it on a computer or refreshed on a computer.
Carmen, who needs better training the most?
Well, we need to start at the top with the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, who is charged with standardizing training in the state. The sheriff's office is responsible. They actually have two academies. So there's the academy when you decide to move over to patrol, so the Sheriff's Police Academy, and then there's the Correctional Academy. Both academies, the actual curriculum is outlined by the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, but the Training and Standards Board does not track all of the training done by the Sheriff's Office. For example, I attend an academy, 440 hours. The state only records the 200 necessary for the
Forefront of the news lately, and unfortunately, quite a few people have lost their lives due to the use of guns. That is a situation where the legislature needs to step up and do their job. The sheriff's office, the municipal police, the Chicago Police Department, we will always do our job. The last Memorial Day weekend, the Chicago Police Department took in 75 guns. So the job is being done on their end.
Carmen, are we doing enough for combating active shooters in places like school buildings in Cook County?
In the sheriff's office, I was part of a program. We had 2 instructors come in, and all of our street units and our sheriff's police officers were trained by our officers in the court services department for rapid response training. Are we doing enough? I don't think we're ever doing enough, as we've seen recently. And that's why I keep saying gun control is important. I'm talking about military-style weapons. That's what our police are not equipped to defend us against. And you can train, but when I drop off my second grader at school and he asks me if he's safe, and I say yes because I see the doors being locked and I see that he's in a brick building, and then he tells me that they trained with the code word is announced over the PA, where he's supposed to huddle, how they're supposed to hide. That should not be what our children are learning in school, and that's part of their training. When we were in grammar school, we learned to put our head down between our knees and huddle for the tornado sirens, and our kids are learning to run and hide when they hear gunfire. I do not think we're doing enough, and as I said, we need to start with common sense gun laws, which is our officers cannot protect themselves or us from these military-style weapons.
Nolan, are we doing enough about active shooters in places like schools?
No, the obvious question is no, because when we have children dying the way they are dying in their schools and places that they're supposed to be safe, we're obviously not doing enough. Interestingly enough, my degree covers the active shooter and mass shooting incidents. The issue for me right now is that everybody's so busy scoring political points over the arguments of gun control or active shooter that they're not focusing on what can be done right now, today, in those schools. There are things that can be done that can mitigate active shooters now, hardening those schools, providing the resources from state, federal, local agencies. They can do those things now. You cannot wait for new legislation, whether it's gun control or anything else, to try and make our schools safe. Those schools need to be safe now. We don't want to wait another year or for another mass shooting to say, what are we going to do again? We're here again, another mass shooting. You have to do the hard work and invest in those schools now. There are many things. You can do the locking, the drills, the training, the armed teachers, on and on and on. These are the things that can happen now, and that's what we need to focus on.
The gangs love to use juveniles to do things like carjackings, send out the shorties because they know they really won't spend much time in jail, if any, and certainly not beyond the age of 21. Do we need some Juvie reform, Carmen?
Do we ever? During my career, I was in charge of the juvenile courthouse for 2 years. I ran juvenile and the eviction unit at the same time. And the sheriff's office does not control the actual detention portion. That is run by the office of the chief judge. And every day we used to bring juveniles down to court and have to search them before they go in. And the conversations we would have with them, they didn't understand what a pension was. They didn't understand what getting a raise meant. Basic knowledge of, for future. No one's ever had those kind of conversations with them, but they understood, and I'm still giggling when I heard you use the word shorty, because I haven't used that in years, but that was pretty good. And that's the issue. They cannot be what they cannot see. And those kind of conversations. And I want to work with the Office of the Chief Judge to develop programs. They used to have, and they mirrored it after the boot camp for the adults. They used to have a juvenile SWAT program, a juvenile boot program, where they participated in these programs every day with individuals from the detention center, with individuals from the community who actually brought some resources out to them so that they can learn and see beyond their square blocks.
Juvenile justice reform, Nolan?
Yes, I think the juvenile justice needs reforming. I think we see that our children have become our oppressors. You see them out there on the streets in downtown, carjackings, multiple arrests for carjackings, multiple arrests for robberies. At some point, we have to come to the conclusion that what we're doing, and for those individuals, for repeat offenders, for they have to be treated differently. Not everyone is going to be treated the same. Again, we have to get away from blanket solutions to individual problems. These are individuals that are consistently in crime. They are not going to really look to change to better themselves if they are continuously getting arrested for crimes. Programs are good. We can have the programs. The programs will reach some of them, of course, but we have to make the hard decisions on some of them that are consistently committing the crimes and getting away with them.
Before we move to your brief closing message, a political question. How do either of you win? If you're sitting just splitting the anti-Tom Dart vote, what chance do you have, especially when he has the Democratic organization endorsement? Carmen, how do you win?
The voters of Cook County, I believe, I know are much stronger than the party itself. They're ready for change. We're ready for change. If I was ready for change, so are the voters. How do I win? By doing exactly what I've been doing, going out, delivering my message over and over and over again, and talking and taking the questions and not being afraid and understanding that I am not running against anyone. I am running, again, because I am a mother and a grandmother. I am running to protect my family. And what I'm running for is stronger than anything I can ever run against. That's how I'm going to win.
Nolan, how do you win?
Well, again, doing what I'm doing. I'm out there on the grassroots, talking to people, places where Tom Dart would never go, and I've been told that. They've never seen him, or they've seen him one time in 17 years. So I'm not afraid to go and talk to these individuals because they appreciate it. They understand that I'm there as a genuine, honest broker in being the sheriff. So I've touched a lot of people with their in a personal sense, and I'm going to continue to do that. I think, again, it comes down to his arrogance and his entitlement, and that's what's going to do him in.
Now, please, brief closing remarks.
I got in this race in October of 2021, and I was told that I would not be sitting here come June of 2022. Yet, here I sit with all the challenges. It's been difficult, having to work full-time and run a campaign, but I did it because it's important to me. I have the professional and personal experiences to lead this office and to lead it with integrity, a high sense of morality, and professionally. I am the bridge between law enforcement and our communities because I am both. I believe that is what the voters need. I believe that is what our criminal justice partners need. I think we need to stop wasting money on lawsuits and federal investigations, and we need to start doing the work of public safety.
Your closing message, Nolan?
Sure. First of all, I want to thank everyone for allowing me to be here, and to you, sir, for being the moderator. It's been a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a father of 5. I've been a single parent now twice in my late ages now. We are a Gold Star family, which means one of our loved ones died and gave their full measure of service to the community. My wife, Sheila Rivera, who was a ordained minister and a proud Native American from the Choctaw, Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, was the first Cook County Corrections officer to die in the line of duty due to COVID. When we often live our spouse's jobs, so when she would come to me at night and tell me about the things that were going on, the abuses, the dysfunction at Cook County, they were egregious. I couldn't literally believe the things that she was telling me. When I asked her why these things were going on, she would just simply say, they just don't care. So I have a deep personal interest in this race. And it's not, as I was explaining to our guests at the table, it's not a vindictive thing. It's a personal issue that drives me to get the job done. I am the most qualified professional for the job of sheriff. My background proves that. My background has never been in question. And we can no longer afford to go to our corners, cross our arms, and refuse to be engaged. My own son was a victim of an attempted carjacking. So crime isn't just knocking on your door or my door, it's trying to knock it down. I will be a sheriff that you can trust.
And there you have Tom Dart's challengers. The Union League Club thanks you for coming.
Thank you.
And we'd give you a mug, but apparently
I was waiting for one, that's why I didn't move. Where's
At
my
lea-
mug?
At
there's
least
a
a pen.
shipping problem.
Not a pen? Not even a pen?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Media availability for each of the candidates, 5 minutes, if you want to take a little break, one at a time up here at the podium. Media wants to come on.
Oh. Good job.
Sure.
You want us to stand up?
Your phone or? Ready? On 3, 1, 2, 3. Yes. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, thank you. It was a good substantive debate.
It was.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for moderating. So I think you're going to go first for the media, and then we'll have you come in.
Oh, you can go first, his stuff is there already. Or you're gonna have,
Yeah, well, you'll go first.
okay. Thank you. Hello.
All right, sounds good. You know what, you're still not absolutely on the ballot. Give us the update, where does it stand, and how soon will you know? I mean, people are already voting.
Yes, they are already voting. I actually ran into some people who have started, and I run into them on the street and they say, I just voted for you today. But yes, so Tom Dart continues to take everything up another level. So we're now in the appellate court, and briefs are due today or tomorrow. I stay out of that part of it. My lawyers have been very good and told me what my job is, and I know what my job is. My job is to campaign. Their job is to deal with what's going on in court. I've been confident from the beginning. I'm not concerned. The only challenge is the qualifications and Tom Dart's misinterpretation of what that meant, and finding out that it didn't mean what he hoped it meant is what's disturbing for him, and that's fine. It doesn't keep me up at night.
It sounds like both you and Nolan agree that violent defendants should not be out on him. But I actually read that Tom Dart got sued because he briefly paused the program for
So that litigation was specifically because he received the court order and then just didn't do it. There was no follow-up. So as the sheriff, you could go back to the court and say, this is what I've received, and present everything that you've received on the background, and whether you can keep the community safe and properly supervise that individual. If at the end of that conversation, the judge says, I'm placing them on electronic monitoring anyway, then my job as sheriff is to ensure that they're properly supervised and that I have the equipment and the programming to do so. That would be my job. What he did is when he had his panel of judges, they arbitrarily decided, I'm not putting this person out, I'm not putting that one out, and that's all they did. There was no conversation with the court. We do not work, this office does not work in a silo, nor should it work in a silo. As long as there's conversations and you find out where you agree, you can always build on that. Is there always going to be litigation? Absolutely, there's always going to be a threat of litigation. But more so if you don't have the conversations to begin with. Like right now, he tried it again a month ago where there was an order, and he says, well, no, I'm not going to follow that order about electronic monitoring. 4 weeks later, he says, okay, I'm going to do what the judge says, even though the law says this. Tom Dart has done that over and over again. He did it with evictions in 2009. He halted evictions because he had a moral and ethical reason to do that, correct? He was able to argue that and have the conversations. So this portion of the being sued because he wasn't putting people out on electronic monitoring, to me, that was another ploy to get some media attention. He didn't do it properly. There was never conversation with the Office of the Chief Judge.
The 65,000 warrant number that you used, is it fair to say that those are all the sheriff's responsibility? I mean, you know the office, considering how many officers they have, is it even realistic to think that only the sheriff's office should be the one getting, executing those warrants?
I do not believe it should be, at this point, with that many, it should not only be the sheriff's office. My statement is that those warrants are the responsibility of the sheriff's office. So to begin to attack that issue, we have 134 municipalities in Cook County. If out of the 65,000 warrants, 3,000 are in Niles, a conversation with the Niles Police Department. I have these 3,000 warrants in your jurisdiction. Do you have any personnel that can help supplement? You can even have administrative civilian personnel who works with the law enforcement agency database, which is leads, to look up individuals. Some of those individuals may be deceased now, may already be in custody and this warrant wasn't processed. So you may be able to dwindle that number down and then find and work with the municipalities within Cook County to address that issue. No criminal justice partner in Cook County at this point should be doing anything in a silo.
You have time for one more question.
As Pride Month kicks off in cities across the state, there's the Aurora Pride organizers are asking for uniformed officers not to join their parade. Do you have a comment on uniformed officers and vehicles being in pride parades and celebrations across the city?
I believe that our officers are a representation of all the communities we serve. We participate in parades all year long, from St. Patrick's Day to the Polish Independence Parade, Constitutional Parade. The Pride Parade should be no different.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
So it appears you're like one of the few that he hasn't tried to challenge to get off the bench. So perhaps he doesn't realize the strength of your convictions. I mean, what do you make of this?
Well, actually, he did try to challenge my signatures, was unsuccessful. And ever since then, my qualifications have never been in question. So I think he is underestimating me.
I should know that. But this whole process of trying to get everybody off.
Yes.
Farmington, Britannia, it does appear he's nervous about these opponents.
Well, this has been Mr. Dart's pattern all along. Every time that he has been challenged, He would rather spend the resources on knocking people out before the election. That way he saves his resources instead of having to fight somebody until November. So that's the same pattern that he's doing now, is trying to knock everybody out if possible so that he's the only one there and save his resources. And that actually drains a lot of our resources. The system actually needs to be looked at hard because it is very much in the favor of an incumbent.
The sheriff's office has seen a cut in 2021. They've had to move some staffers and diversion programs to help beef up EM staffing. So just, in reality, there will be times of austerity. What will you prioritize during those times? Bread and butter, public safety issues, or, as you were saying, programming, mental health, and stuff like that?
Right. I think the first thing that we need to do is establish a roadmap of what exactly the sheriff's office role and responsibilities are. We have to try and, like mental health, if we can be the first step, but mental health is a long-term issue, and also drug abuse. So those are the things that we're going to I'm going to reorganize and restructure the sheriff's office, starting from the top down, and we will save some resources and money and reallocate positions. Again, this is why I bring up the 3,000 that needs to be hired. LA County has over 9,900 sworn sheriff's police officers. We only have 625. So we're upside down here. LA County is the largest county in the nation. We're the second largest, yet we have one of the smallest police departments to patrol this county. Granted, Chicago Cook is part of that, but they are still part of the county, and we have a role there. So we will reallocate those resources where the need is greatest.
Can I ask actually related to that? You mentioned hiring 3,000.
Yes.
Now, first of all, did you said officers. Do you mean officers or just 3,000 more employees?
No, there'll be, the majority will be officers, and that's going to be because of the restructuring of the office. I anticipate in soft numbers right now that we'll have anywhere from 18 to 20, 25 million in recouping some of those personnel costs by eliminating a lot of the top heavy burden that we're carrying at the office. That money will be reinvested in hiring new officers, because the officers not only at the jail, especially at the jail, they're under stress. They're under a crisis. When you have one officer monitoring 3 tiers, that's dangerous. That's dangerous for the officer. That's dangerous for the detainees. When you're supposed to have a minimum of 2 per tier. So think about that. You have one officer trying to control three tiers. That's not something that should be happening. So there is a need for more personnel.
Can I ask one more question? Can I ask a quick follow-up, and then you can ask a question? Is that all right? I don't want to make sure you get a question.
Sure.
Because I just want you to
I'll keep it
clarify
short.
This reducing, because initially what you proposed, it sounded like you grow the office by almost 50% by adding 3,000 people. Is that what you're saying, or how many positions would you want to eliminate? What's your ultimate goal for the department?
Yes, my ultimate goal is to eliminate about 300 top-level positions that are redundant or that really have no, as far as I'm concerned, use. When you have directors that are in charge of themselves, and the average salary for a director is anywhere from $90,000 to $97,000. That's a lot of money that we can recoup and invest it in the people that are doing the job day in and day out. So I think we're talking about some patronage there.
What kind of incentive plan could you offer officers to make them want to work for the county? Right now we have shortages, they just don't want to do it.
Yes, yes. So I would have language bonuses, educational bonuses. If you come to the sheriff's office and you have an outstanding student loan, we will see what we can do to provide maybe up to $5,000 in relief for that loan. Of course, you would have to agree to some stipulations to that. If you're an EMT, if you have some technical skills that we could use at the boot camp and become a mentor at the boot camp, you would get an incentive. If you're a psychiatrist or psychologist or counselor, licensed counselor, then you would get those incentives also, because I want you to stay and I want you to be proud. The problem is that when these officers get there, they get bombarded by the reality of what they've just walked into. And I want people who want to stay. And hiring is one of the most expensive propositions for any agency, hiring and training. So we don't want to waste those resources.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.